The emergency klaxon screamed through the bridge of the Galactic Council's flagship, Celestial Harmony. Admiral ZYX-9 of the Corthanian Empire pressed his four-fingered hand against the communication console, his purple scales darkening with stress. The bridge crew of various alien species worked frantically at their stations, their movements quick and desperate. Report. Admiral ZYX-9 commanded, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had commanded fleets for over 2 centuries. Lieutenant Kyra, a tall Vespian with translucent wings, turned from her console. Sir, we're receiving a distress signal from the Outer Rim. Grid Section 7, Alpha 9. The transmission is unusual. Define unusual, Lieutenant. Kyra's compound eyes flickered with confusion. The signal is coming from a species we've never encountered before. They call themselves humans. But, sir, that's not the strange part. They're not asking for rescue. Admiral ZYX-9's head crest flared with interest. In his long career, every distress signal had been a plea for help. Pirates, natural disasters, mechanical failures, they all ended the same way. Desperate voices begging for salvation. Play the transmission, he ordered. The bridge speakers crackled to life. A calm, measured voice filled the space, speaking in what the universal translator identified as Standard Galactic Common, though with an unfamiliar accent. This is Captain Sarah Chun of the Earth vessel Defiance. We are transmitting this signal to warn any nearby ships of an imminent threat. A Devour-class entity has been detected in this system. We are engaging the creature to prevent it from reaching populated sectors. All ships should maintain a minimum distance of 50 astronomical units from our position. Repeat, this is not a distress call. This is a warning. The transmission ended. Silence filled the bridge for several seconds before nervous chatter broke out among the crew. A Devour-class entity? Whispered Commander Thek, the ship's reptilian tactical officer. Sir, we should jump to hyperspace immediately. Admiral ZYX-9 had heard of Devour-class entities only in classified military briefings. Massive spaceborne creatures that consumed entire planets. They were considered myths by most of the galaxy. The few confirmed sightings in galactic history had resulted in the complete evacuation of entire star systems. How many ships are in their fleet? Admiral ZYX-9 asked. Lieutenant Kyra checked her sensors. Sir, I'm only detecting one vessel. It appears to be small, maybe 300 meters in length. One ship. The Admiral's voice carried disbelief. Are you certain? Confirmed, sir. One small vessel. Admiral ZYX-9 stared at the tactical display. A single unknown ship was claiming to engage a planet-eating monster. Either these humans were completely insane, or they possessed capabilities beyond anything in recorded galactic history. Sir, Communications Officer Vril interrupted. We're receiving another transmission from the human vessel. Put it through. Captain Chen's voice returned, but this time it carried traces of excitement rather than calm professionalism. Unknown vessel, this is Captain Chun. We've detected your ship on our sensors. You need to clear the area immediately. The entity has emerged from subspace and is larger than our initial calculations suggested. Patch me through to them. Admiral ZYX-9 commanded. Channel open, sir. Captain Chun, this is Admiral ZYX-9 of the Galactic Council flagship Celestial Harmony. We have received your warning. However, galactic protocols require us to offer assistance to any vessel engaging hostile entities. Do you require support? A pause followed. Then, what sounded suspiciously like human laughter came through the speakers. Admiral, with all due respect, unless your ship is equipped with quantum-enhanced weapons and multidimensional shields, you'd just be giving that thing a bigger meal. We've got this handled. Commander Thek leaned toward the Admiral. Sir, quantum-enhanced weapons are theoretical technology. No known species has achieved practical application. Captain Chun, Admiral ZYX-9 continued. Perhaps you don't understand the nature of what you're facing. Devour-class entities are planet killers. The recommended protocol is immediate system evacuation. Admiral, we understand exactly what we're facing. This isn't our first encounter with one of these creatures. Now please, clear the area so we can work without worrying about collateral damage. The transmission cut off. Sir, Lieutenant Kyra called out, her voice tight with fear. Long-range sensors are detecting massive energy readings. The entity, it's enormous, easily the size of a small moon. And they think they can fight that with one ship? Commander Thek muttered. Take us to a safe distance, but maintain sensor lock, Admiral ZYX-9 ordered. I want to see what these humans are planning. The Celestial Harmony retreated to 55 astronomical units and activated its most powerful sensors. The crew watched in fascination and terror as the readings displayed before them. The Devour-class entity was indeed massive, a writhing mass of organic technology that pulsed with dark energy. Tentacles the size of city blocks extended from its central body, each one capable of cracking a planet's surface. The creature moved through space with purpose, heading directly toward the inhabited systems of the inner galaxy. The human ship Defiance looked like an insect next to the cosmic horror. Yet as they watched, the small vessel moved into an attack position. Sir, the sensor operator reported, the human ship it's charging weapons. But I'm not reading conventional energy signatures. These readings are unlike anything in our databases. Put the energy readings on the main screen, Admiral ZYX-9 ordered. The tactical display showed energy patterns that defied known physics. Instead of the typical beam or projectile weapons used by galactic civilizations, the human ship was generating what appeared to be tears in space itself. Impossible, breathed Commander Thek. They're weaponizing dimensional rifts. Suddenly, the Defiance fired. Reality itself seemed to bend around the human weapons. Streams of concentrated dimensional energy lanced out from the small ship, each beam carrying enough power to vaporize a moon. The weapons struck the Devour-class entity dead center. The creature's roar carried across space, a psychic scream that made every crew member on the Celestial Harmony clutch their heads in pain. But the attack had clearly hurt it. Massive chunks of organic matter broke away from the entity's body, dissolving into subspace. How? Lieutenant Cairo whispered. How are they generating that kind of power? The answer came as the human ship began to transform. What they had assumed was a single vessel suddenly separated into dozens of smaller craft, each one beginning its own attack run. The ship had been an entire fleet in a compressed configuration. By the ancient stars, Admiral ZYX-9 breathed. They're using space compression technology. Space compression was another theoretical concept that most galactic scientists considered impossible to achieve. The amount of energy required to fold space around multiple vessels should have been beyond any civilization's capabilities. The human fleet moved with perfect coordination, their weapons carving through the entity's defenses like hot plasma through ice. But the creature was far from defeated. It began to fight back, launching massive bioelectric attacks that could have destroyed any known warship. The human vessels simply phased out of normal space-time, allowing the attacks to pass harmlessly through their positions before reappearing to continue their assault. They're using temporal displacement, the science officer reported, his voice filled with awe. They're literally stepping outside of linear time to avoid attacks. Admiral ZYX-9 felt his world-view crumbling. Everything the Galactic Council believed about the limits of technology was being shattered by this unknown human fleet. They were using weapons and defenses that existed only in theoretical papers written by the galaxy's most advanced scientists. Sir, Communications Officer Vril called out. Incoming transmission from the lead human vessel. Captain Chun. Admiral, the entity is weakening but not defeated. We're going to need to use our final protocol. I strongly recommend you increase your distance to at least 100 astronomical units. What exactly is your final protocol? We're going to collapse a small section of space-time around the creature. Don't worry, it's a controlled collapse. We've done this before. Admiral ZYX-9's blood turned cold. These humans were talking about collapsing space-time as casually as discussing the weather. Such an action could theoretically destroy an entire star system if it went wrong. Captain, perhaps we should discuss Sorry, Admiral. No time for committee meetings. Initiating final protocol now. The transmission ended. On the sensors, the human fleet began to arrange itself in a complex geometric pattern around the dying entity. Energy readings spiked beyond the measuring capability of Galactic Council technology. All ships, emergency jump. Admiral ZYX-9 commanded. Maximum distance. The Celestial Harmony engaged its hyperdrive, fleeing to a safe distance just as the human weapons activated. Even from 100 astronomical units away, the flash of the controlled space-time collapse was visible to the naked eye. When the energy dissipated, both the entity and the human fleet were gone. The entire section of space where the battle had taken place now showed readings of perfectly normal vacuum. "Sir," Lieutenant Kyra reported, "I'm detecting a small craft approaching our position." A single human shuttle approached the Celestial Harmony. Captain Chen's voice came over the communication system. "Admiral ZYX-9, this is Captain Chen requesting permission to come aboard. I believe we have some things to discuss." 20 minutes later, Captain Chen materialized in the Celestial Harmony's main conference room via the ship's matter transporter. She was smaller than most galactic species, with dark hair and intelligent brown eyes. She wore a simple uniform with no elaborate decorations, yet she carried herself with quiet confidence. "Thank you for agreeing to this meeting, Admiral," she said, taking a seat across from the assembled senior staff. "Captain," Admiral ZYX-9 began, "I must ask directly, what are humans?" Chen smiled, an expression that somehow managed to be both friendly and predatory. "We're explorers, Admiral. We left our home system about 50 years ago and have been mapping the outer rim ever since." 50 years, Commander Thek interrupted. "Impossible. It takes most species centuries to develop interstellar flight, and millennia to achieve the technology we witness today. Different approaches to problem solving, I suppose," Chen replied casually. "We tend to think outside established parameters." "Captain," Admiral ZYX-9 said carefully, "the weapons you use today, the defensive systems, the space compression technology, these are far beyond anything the Galactic Council has achieved. Our best scientists consider most of what you displayed to be impossible. With respect, Admiral, your scientists might be thinking too small." The room fell silent. The implications of her words were staggering. "How many ships do humans possess?" Admiral ZYX-9 asked. "That's classified information, Admiral. But I will say that what you saw today was a single patrol unit." "A patrol unit?" "The Defiance Group is designed for routine outer rim reconnaissance. When we detected the entity's approach vector, we diverted to intercept. Standard operating procedure." Admiral ZYX-9 felt dizzy. If this was routine for humans, what were their actual military capabilities? "Captain, why haven't we encountered humans before?" "You haven't been looking in the right places," Chen replied. "We prefer the frontier regions. Too much bureaucracy in the inner systems for our taste." "And the entity? You fought these creatures before." "Several times. They're attracted to heavily populated areas, so we try to intercept them before they reach inhabited systems. Usually we can redirect them back to deep space, but this one was particularly aggressive." Chen stood up, smoothing down her uniform. "Admiral, I've enjoyed this conversation, but I need to rejoin my fleet. We have other patrol sectors to cover." "Wait," Admiral ZYX-9 said quickly. "The Galactic Council would be very interested in establishing formal contact with humanity, perhaps an exchange of knowledge, or even an alliance." Chen's smile became genuinely amused. "Admiral, the Galactic Council is welcome to submit a formal contact request through proper channels. You can reach our diplomatic corps through the Frontier Communications Network." "You have a diplomatic corps?" "Of course. How do you think we've been monitoring galactic politics for the past 50 years? The statement hit the room like a physical blow. Humans have been watching the galaxy for half a century without anyone knowing they existed. "One last question, Captain," Admiral ZYX-9 said. "Why reveal yourselves now?" Chen paused at the door. "Because that entity was heading straight for a system with 12 billion inhabited worlds. We don't let innocent people die when we can prevent it." She activated her personal transporter and vanished in a shimmer of light. The senior staff of the Celestial Harmony sat in stunned silence for several minutes. "Sir," Lieutenant Kyra finally spoke, "what do we tell the Galactic Council?" Admiral ZYX-9 stared at the empty chair where Captain Chun had been sitting. Everything he thought he knew about the galaxy had just been overturned by a single conversation with a human who treated planet-killing monsters as routine patrol hazards. "We tell them the truth," he said finally. "And then, we pray they're as peaceful as they seem." Outside the conference room windows, the stars looked different somehow. Somewhere out there in the vast darkness, humans were patrolling the frontier with technology that made the galaxy's greatest achievements look primitive. And they had been doing it for 50 years without anyone knowing they existed. The galaxy was about to learn that they were no longer the apex civilizations they believed themselves to be. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been called within hours of Admiral ZYX-9's report. Representatives from all major civilizations filled the massive amphitheater on Nexus Prime, the galaxy's political center. The air hummed with nervous energy and the chatter of a dozen different languages. Chancellor Vex of the Triangulum Republic called the session to order with 3 sharp taps of her crystalline gavel. The amphitheater fell silent as hundreds of eyes, sensors, and other sensory organs focused on the central podium. Fellow beings, Chancellor Vex began, her melodic voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustic enhancement systems. We have received troubling information from the Outer Rim. Admiral ZYX-9 of the Corthanian Empire will present his findings. Admiral ZYX-9 approached the speaker's platform, his purple scales still slightly darkened from stress. He had spent the past 18 hours preparing his report, knowing that its contents would reshape galactic politics forever. Honored representatives, he began. 3 days ago, my fleet encountered an unknown species calling themselves humans. They displayed technological capabilities that far exceed anything in our current understanding of physics. Murmurs of disbelief rippled through the chamber. Ambassador Click, 9 of the Insectoid Collective, raised one of his forearms. Admiral, with respect, are you certain this wasn't some form of advanced deception? Perhaps holographic projections or sensor manipulation? I had the same initial thoughts, Ambassador. However, our science teams have analyzed the sensor data extensively. The energy signatures were genuine. These humans wielded weapons that manipulated space-time itself. The chamber erupted in concerned chatter. Representative Thulon of the Aquatic Federation activated her translation device, the mechanical voice cutting through the noise. Such technology is impossible according to our best scientific understanding. Are you suggesting that our knowledge of physics is fundamentally flawed? Admiral ZYX-9 activated the holographic display system. 3-dimensional images filled the air above the amphitheater, showing the battle between the human fleet and the Devour-class entity. Judge for yourselves. The assembled representatives watched in stunned silence as the recording played. The casual way the humans phased through attacks, the dimensional rift weapons, the controlled collapse of space-time. It was like watching magic performed with scientific precision. By the ancient codes, whispered Senator Grex of the Silicon Commonwealth. They destroyed a planet-eater like it was a minor inconvenience. That's not the most disturbing part, Admiral ZYX-9 continued. According to their captain, this was a routine patrol action. They've been monitoring our space for 50 years without our knowledge. The chamber felt completely silent. The implications were staggering. Chancellor Vex leaned forward. Admiral, did this Captain Chen indicate hostile intentions? Quite the opposite, Chancellor. They engaged the entity specifically to protect populated systems in the inner galaxy. When I offered alliance discussions, the captain seemed amused. She suggested we contact their diplomatic corps through frontier communication networks. They have established diplomatic protocols. Ambassador Click-9's compound eyes flickered with interest. Apparently, which suggests they've been observing us long enough to understand our political structures. Representative Zara of the nomadic clan stood, her environmental suit gleaming under the chamber lights. What are their numbers? Ship counts? Military capabilities? Unknown. Captain Chen classified that information. However, she did indicate that the fleet I witnessed was a single patrol unit. The chamber exploded into concerned discussions. If a patrol unit could casually destroy planet-killing entities, what were their actual military forces capable of? Chancellor Vex restored order with her gavel. The question before us is clear. How do we respond to the discovery of a potentially superior civilization that has been watching us for decades? We should establish contact immediately, declared Ambassador Fry of the Democratic World's Union. Any species capable of such advanced technology could revolutionize galactic civilization. Or conquer it, countered General Vorth of the Military Coalition. We know nothing about their true intentions. They could be studying us for invasion. Admiral ZYX-9 cleared his throat. If I may, General, if they intended conquest, they've had 50 years to achieve it. The fact that they revealed themselves only to protect innocent lives suggests peaceful intentions. Or clever manipulation, General Vorth replied. Make themselves appear heroic to lower our defenses. The debate raged for hours. Some representatives advocated for immediate contact and potential alliance. Others wanted to increase military readiness and prepare for possible threats. A few suggested attempting to hide from human attention entirely. Finally, Chancellor Vex called for order. We will establish a first contact committee to handle initial communications with these humans. Admiral ZYX-9, you will serve as military liaison given your direct experience. Yes, Chancellor. However, she continued, we will also quietly enhance our defensive preparations. If these humans prove hostile, we must be ready. The session was adjourning when urgent alarms began sounding throughout the building. Emergency lights bathed the chamber in red as security protocols activated. What's happening? Chancellor Vex demanded. A security officer rushed to the podium. Chancellor, we have an unauthorized vessel approaching Nexus Prime. It bypassed all outer defense grids without triggering any alerts. Show me. The chamber's main display activated, showing external sensor feeds. A sleek vessel unlike any known design was approaching the planet's surface. It moved with fluid grace, its hull seeming to shift and flow like liquid metal. Classification, Admiral ZYX-9 asked. Unknown, sir. It doesn't match any known shipyard designs. However, it's transmitting a standard diplomatic approach signal. The ship's communication system activated, filling the chamber with a familiar voice. Nexus Prime Control, this is Captain James Morrison of the Earth diplomatic vessel Endeavour. We're requesting permission to land and address the Galactic Council directly. Admiral ZYX-9 felt his scales pale. Another human ship. How did they know we were discussing them? Representative Thulon asked. Because they've been monitoring our communications, Admiral ZYX-9 realized. Probably for decades. Chancellor Vex made a quick decision. Grant landing permission. If they wanted to harm us, they've had ample opportunity. 30 minutes later, Captain James Morrison entered the amphitheater with two companions. He was taller than Captain Chun, with graying hair and the bearing of someone accustomed to command. His companions were clearly scientists, judging by their equipment-laden belts and analytical expressions. Honored representatives, Captain Morrison began, his voice carrying easily through the chamber without amplification. Thank you for agreeing to this meeting. I'm Captain Morrison, Earth's senior diplomatic officer for this sector. Captain, Chancellor Vex responded. We were just discussing your people. Your timing is remarkably convenient. Morrison smiled. Not convenient, Chancellor. Planned. We've been monitoring your emergency session since it began. When it became clear you were struggling with how to contact us, we decided to save everyone some time. The casual admission that they had been listening to supposedly secure council communications sent worried murmurs through the assembly. How long have you been monitoring our communications? General Vorth demanded. Since we first detected your civilization, General. Standard first contact protocols require extensive observation before revealing ourselves. We wanted to understand your cultures, languages, and political structures before making contact. Standard protocols? Ambassador Click, 9 leaned forward. You've made contact with other civilizations? Of course. You're not the first galactic community we've encountered. The statement hung in the air like a physical presence. The Galactic Council represented nearly every known intelligent species in their sector of the galaxy. The idea that there were others beyond their borders was mind-numbing. How many? Representative Zara asked quietly. Classified information, I'm afraid. But I can tell you that this galaxy contains far more intelligent life than your current charts indicate. One of Morrison's companions, a woman with short blonde hair, stepped forward. I'm Dr. Sarah Kim, xenocultural specialist. We've prepared information packages about basic human history and culture to help facilitate understanding. She activated a device that projected detailed holographic displays throughout the chamber. Images of Earth, human cities, space stations, and star charts filled the air. Humans originated on a planet called Earth in what you classify as Sector 7, Gamma 2. We achieved interstellar flight approximately 73 years ago and have been exploring ever since. The star charts showed human presence throughout regions the Council had assumed were empty space. Colonies, research stations, and patrol routes extended far beyond the galaxy's mapped territories. You've been here for 70 years, Admiral ZYX-9 observed, but only revealed yourselves 3 days ago. Why now? Captain Morrison's expression grew serious. Because recent events suggest that our period of quiet observation must end. The entity Admiral ZYX-9 witnessed was part of a larger pattern. Larger pattern? Chancellor Vex asked. The Devour-class entities aren't naturally occurring creatures. They're weapons. Someone or something has been breeding them and directing them toward populated systems. The chamber fell silent. The idea that planet-killing monsters were artificially created weapons was terrifying beyond imagination. Who would create such things? Representative Thulon whispered. We call them the Void Collective, Dr. Kim replied. An aggressive civilization from beyond the galactic rim. They've been probing your space for weaknesses, using the entities as scouts and terror weapons. Terror weapons? General Vorth stood abruptly. Are you saying we're under attack? Not yet, Captain Morrison replied. But our intelligence suggests they're preparing for a large-scale invasion. The entity Admiral ZYX-9 encountered was testing your defensive responses. And they found us completely helpless, Admiral ZYX-9 said grimly. That's not entirely true, Admiral. Your ships performed better than many species we've observed. But, yes, current galactic military technology wouldn't be effective against a coordinated Void Collective assault. The implications were devastating. Everything the Council had built, all the civilizations they represented, could be swept away by an enemy they hadn't even known existed. What do you propose? Chancellor Vex asked. Alliance, Captain Morrison replied simply. We're prepared to share defensive technologies and tactical knowledge to help prepare for what's coming. In exchange, we want formal recognition and trade agreements. What kind of defensive technologies? General Vorth asked, his skepticism warring with desperate hope. Dr. Kim activated another holographic display. Shield harmonics that can deflect dimensional attacks. Weapons that can penetrate bioorganic armor. Communication systems that can't be intercepted. Manufacturing techniques for quantum-enhanced materials. The technology displayed was decades ahead of anything in Council databases. With human assistance, the galaxy's defensive capabilities could be revolutionized. There is one condition, Captain Morrison continued. Any species that joins our mutual defense agreement must pledge to follow certain ethical guidelines regarding warfare and civilian protection, such as, Ambassador Fry inquired. No targeting of non-combatants. No use of planet-killing weapons against inhabited worlds. No forced assimilation of conquered populations. Standard civilized warfare protocols. Those are already illegal under Council law. Chancellor Vex pointed out. Good. That makes things easier. The discussion continued for hours. Technical specifications were shared, political frameworks were discussed, and preliminary agreements were drafted. Throughout it all, the human representatives displayed knowledge of galactic politics that was both impressive and slightly unsettling. As the session concluded, Captain Morrison made one final statement. Representatives, I want you to understand something important. Humans don't seek to rule or control other species. We're explorers and defenders by nature. Our goal is to ensure that intelligence life can flourish throughout the galaxy without fear of extinction. And if we decline your alliance? General Vorth asked. Morrison's expression remained calm, but his eyes grew hard. Then, you'll face the Void Collective alone. We'll continue protecting our own territories and allies, but we won't risk human lives defending those who choose isolation. The unspoken message was clear. Join the alliance, or be abandoned to face an overwhelming enemy without support. How long do we have to decide? Chancellor Vex asked. Our intelligence suggests the main Void Collective force will arrive in approximately 18 months. I recommend you decide quickly. As the human delegation prepared to leave, Admiral ZYX-9 approached Captain Morrison. Captain, may I ask a personal question? Certainly, Admiral. Are we truly equals in this proposed alliance, or are humans simply offering protection to primitive species out of charity? Morrison considered the question carefully. Admiral, humans learned long ago that intelligence takes many forms. You might be behind us in certain technologies, but your people have centuries of experience in galactic diplomacy. The Aquatic Federation's biosciences are remarkable. The Silicon Commonwealth's computational methods are elegant beyond human achievement. We need what you can offer as much as you need our defensive capabilities. The answer seemed genuine, but Admiral ZYX-9 couldn't shake the feeling that humanity was like a patient adult humoring clever children. The power differential was simply too vast to ignore. As the human ship departed Nexus Prime, leaving behind detailed technical specifications and proposed treaty frameworks, the Galactic Council faced the most important decision in its history. Accept alliance with a species that could reshape their understanding of reality itself, or maintain independence while facing an existential threat that might destroy everything they had built. The vote was scheduled for the following week. The galaxy held its breath while its leaders decided the future of every intelligent species within their borders. The vote had been unanimous. Every representative of the Galactic Council agreed to the human alliance, though Admiral ZYX-9 suspected fear had motivated the decision more than genuine cooperation. 3 weeks had passed since that historic vote, and the galaxy was transforming at a pace that left most beings struggling to keep up. Admiral ZYX-9 stood on the observation deck of the newly constructed Nexus Defense Station, watching human and galactic ships work together in ways that should have been impossible. Human vessels moved with fluid precision between traditional Council warships, their crews coordinating construction efforts that were reshaping the system's defensive capabilities. Impressive, isn't it? Captain Morrison approached from behind, his footsteps silent on the deck plating. Terrifying would be more accurate, Admiral ZYX-9 replied. Your people have accomplished more in 3 weeks than we typically manage in 3 years. Morrison joined him at the observation window. Below them, a massive construction project was taking shape. Human fabrication ships were assembling what they called a dimensional anchor, a device that would prevent enemy forces from using advanced transportation methods to bypass the system's defenses. Different approaches to problem solving, Morrison said. We tend to work quickly when lives are at stake. Captain, may I ask you something that's been troubling me? Of course. Your people possess technology that makes our most advanced systems look primitive. You've been watching us for decades. You could have conquered the galaxy with minimal effort. Why didn't you? Morrison was quiet for a long moment, watching a human engineering crew install quantum resonance emitters alongside Galactic Council shield generators. Admiral, have you ever owned a pet? The question was so unexpected that Admiral ZYX-9's head crest flared in confusion. Yes, when I was younger. A small lizard called a skitter. Did you love your skitter? Of course. Did you ever consider forcing it to solve mathematical equations or pilot starships? Admiral ZYX-9 felt slightly offended. Don't be ridiculous. Skitters lack the intelligence for such tasks. Exactly. Love doesn't require equality, Admiral. A parent doesn't stop loving their child just because the child can't perform adult tasks. Humans don't measure a civilization's worth by its technological achievements. The comparison should have been insulting, but something in Morrison's tone made it clear he meant no offense. Still, Admiral ZYX-9 found the implication disturbing. You see us as children. We see you as fellow intelligence life with your own unique strengths and perspectives. The fact that you develop differently doesn't make you less valuable. Before Admiral ZYX-9 could respond, his communication device activated. Admiral, you're needed in the tactical center. We have an incoming situation. The tactical center of Nexus Defense Station was a marvel of combined human and galactic technology. Holographic displays showed real-time information from sensors throughout the galaxy, while human-designed quantum computers processed data at speeds that made traditional systems seem glacially slow. Commander Sarah Kim, the human xenocultural specialist who had remained to assist with integration efforts, was coordinating with Lieutenant Kyra at the Central Command Console. Report, Admiral ZYX-9 ordered as he entered. Sir, we're receiving distress calls from the Tellar system. Multiple contacts, moving at impossible speeds. The description matches Void collective scout formations. Morrison activated his personal communicator. Morrison to Fleet Command. We have probable enemy contact at Grid 12, Beta 7. Request immediate response authorization. Authorized, Captain. Task Force Prometheus is standing by. Admiral ZYX 9 felt his blood chill. The humans had been preparing for this moment, but knowing an attack was coming and actually facing it were entirely different things. How many ships are responding, he asked. 27 vessels in the initial response group, Morrison replied. Should be sufficient for a scouting force. 27 ships to face an unknown number of enemies with planet-killing capabilities? Morrison's expression was calm, almost casual. Admiral, you're thinking in terms of traditional fleet engagements. Our ships don't operate under those constraints. The tactical display updated as human vessels departed from their positions throughout the galaxy. Instead of the massive formations Admiral ZYX 9 expected, he watched individual ships or small groups accelerate to speeds that should have been impossible. Captain, those velocity readings must be wrong. They're accurate. Our ships use quantum slipstream drives for tactical movement. Distance becomes less relevant when you're manipulating space-time. Within minutes, human vessels were arriving in the Tellar system from across the galaxy. The tactical display showed them materializing from hyperspace with precision that defied everything Admiral ZYX 9 knew about faster-than-light travel. Tellar System Defense Forces, this is Captain Rodriguez of the Earth Vessel Retribution. Please maintain minimum safe distance while we assess the threat. Thank you for responding so quickly, came the reply from Tellar Prime. We have 6 unknown contacts approaching the outer planets. They're unlike anything in our databases. The human fleet spread throughout the system with mechanical precision. Their ships moved like living creatures, flowing around gravitational bodies and adjusting their positions with fluid grace. Admiral, Commander Kim called out, we're receiving sensor data from the human fleet. Putting it on the main display. The images that appeared made Admiral ZYX 9's scales darken with instinctive fear. The Void Collective scouts were mechanical nightmares, writhing masses of dark metal and organic components that seemed to absorb light itself. Each ship was roughly the size of a galactic cruiser but moved with the speed and agility of a fighter craft. By the ancient codes, whispered Lieutenant Kyra, they're beautiful and terrible. 6 enemy scouts confirmed, Captain Rodriguez reported. Beginning engagement. What followed was unlike any battle Admiral ZYX 9 had ever witnessed. The human ships didn't form battle lines or execute traditional tactical maneuvers. Instead, they simply appeared where they needed to be, striking from angles that should have been impossible and phasing out of normal space-time when the enemy returned fire. The Void Collective scouts fought with desperate fury, their weapons carving through space with dark energy that left temporary rifts in reality itself. But they were fighting an enemy that treated physics as a set of suggestions rather than absolute laws. Human Vessel Challenger, you have 3 bogies closing on your position, the Tellar Defense Coordinator warned. Copy that, Tellar Control. Initiating temporal displacement. On the tactical display, the Challenger simply vanished for 3 seconds, allowing the enemy attacks to pass harmlessly through empty space. When it reappeared, it was behind the attacking scouts with weapons already firing. Impossible, Admiral ZYX 9 breathed. They're moving through time itself. Tactical time displacement, Morrison confirmed. Useful for avoiding attacks or repositioning for optimal firing solutions. The battle was over in 12 minutes. All 6 Void Collective scouts had been destroyed, their wreckage dissolving into subspace as their exotic matter destabilized. The human fleet suffered no losses and only minimal damage from near misses. Tellar system is secure, Captain Rodriguez reported. Beginning analysis of enemy wreckage. We should have preliminary intelligence within the hour. As the human ships began their investigation, Admiral ZYX 9 realized something that chilled him more than the appearance of enemy scouts. Captain Morrison, your fleet just engaged 6 planet-killing weapons and destroyed them in 12 minutes, without suffering a single loss. Correct. The enemies we just witnessed were described as scouts, advance units. Also correct. What happens when the main Void Collective fleet arrives? Morrison's expression grew thoughtful. That depends on how much they've learned from these scouts and how much they're willing to commit to this operation. You're not concerned? Admiral, Humanity has been fighting the Void Collective for 15 years across multiple galaxies. We've developed tactics specifically for their technology. What you witnessed today was a standard anti-scout operation. The casual way Morrison discussed multi-galactic warfare was more frightening than the enemy's scouts themselves. How vast was human civilization? How many wars were they fighting simultaneously? Captain, Commander Kim interrupted, we're receiving analysis data from the fleet. The main display showed detailed scans of the destroyed enemy vessels. The technology was unlike anything in galactic databases, a fusion of mechanical precision and organic adaptation that seemed to violate several fundamental laws of science. The good news, Morrison said, studying the data, is that these scouts are using older generation technology, probably at least 5 years behind their current capabilities. That's good news. Admiral ZYX-9 asked. It means they're not committing their best resources to this operation yet. They're still testing our responses and gathering intelligence. And the bad news? Morrison's expression darkened. The quantum signatures indicate these scouts were manufactured recently. The Void Collective is building new fleets specifically for this invasion. The implications were staggering. The enemy wasn't just sending available forces, they were constructing new armadas designed specifically to conquer the galaxy. How long before the main force arrives? Admiral ZYX-9 asked. Based on construction patterns and deployment timing, probably 8 to 12 months. Less if they decide to accelerate their schedule. Can we be ready? Morrison considered the question carefully. The Galactic Fleet will never be able to match Void Collective firepower directly. But, with proper preparation, we can make conquest too expensive for them to continue. Proper preparation, enhanced defensive positions, improved fleet coordination, better weapons, and, most importantly, proper training for your crews. Over the following weeks, the galaxy became a massive military training ground. Human instructors worked with galactic crews, teaching new tactics and technologies that challenged every assumption about space warfare. Admiral ZYX-9 found himself aboard the Human Training Vessel Academy along with senior officers from every major galactic fleet. The experience was humbling and occasionally terrifying. The key to fighting the Void Collective, explained Commander Torres, the human tactical instructor, is understanding that they think in terms of absolute conquest. They don't take prisoners, they don't negotiate, and they don't retreat unless facing overwhelming opposition. How do you know so much about their psychology? Asked Captain Vri of the Triangulum Republic. Because we've captured and interrogated their command personnel during previous conflicts, Torres replied matter-of-factly. The casual mention of capturing enemy commanders sent murmurs through the assembled officers. The idea of successfully boarding and taking prisoners from ships that could eat planets was beyond their imagination. The Void Collective's primary weakness, Torres continued, is their reliance on overwhelming force. They're not accustomed to facing enemies who can match their technological capabilities. When they encounter serious resistance, they often make tactical errors. What kind of errors? Admiral ZYX-9 asked. Overcommitting forces to single objectives. Ignoring flanking maneuvers. Assuming their weapons will penetrate any defense. Standard mistakes made by forces that are used to easy victories. The training continued for months. Galactic crews learned to work with human technology, coordinate with human tactics, and think in ways that their traditional military training had never prepared them for. But the most disturbing lesson was the gradual realization of just how outmatched they really were. Even with human assistance, the galactic fleets would be facing an enemy that could destroy planets as easily as swatting insects. Admiral, Captain Morrison said during one of their regular briefings, there's something I need to tell you about the coming battle. What? When the Void Collective main fleet arrives, humanity will be fighting to protect this galaxy. But we're also fighting a larger war across multiple galactic clusters. We can't commit our full resources to any single operation. Admiral ZYX-9 felt his hope crumble. You're saying we're on our own? Not entirely. We'll provide significant support. But the majority of the fighting will need to be done by galactic forces using human-enhanced technology. Can we win? Morrison's pause was answer enough. You can make them pay such a high price that they'll look for easier targets. As the months passed and Intelligence reports showed increasing void collective activity in nearby galaxies. Admiral ZYX-9 realized that the human alliance hadn't saved them. It had simply given them a chance to die fighting instead of helpless. But, perhaps, he reflected, that was enough. The invasion began at 0347 Galactic Standard Time on a Tuesday that would forever mark the end of innocence for every civilization in the galaxy. Admiral ZYX-9 was awakened in his quarters aboard the command station by alarms that seemed to pierce directly into his nervous system. All senior staff to battle stations. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill. Admiral ZYX-9 rushed to the command center, his scales already darkening with combat readiness. The scene that greeted him was organized chaos. Dozens of officers coordinating with human liaisons, while holographic displays showed tactical data from across the galaxy. Report, he commanded as he reached the central command platform. Sir, Lieutenant Kyra called out. Massive subspace disturbances detected at 17 different entry points. Energy signatures match void collective dreadnought classifications. 17 simultaneous incursions. Admiral ZYX-9 breathed. They're not just attacking, they're attempting complete strategic dominance. Captain Morrison stood at the human coordination station, speaking rapidly into his communicator while monitoring multiple data streams. Confirmed, Fleet Command. Full-scale invasion across all sectors. Request immediate deployment of all available assets. Morrison to all station personnel, his voice carried over the communication system. This is the real thing, people. Everything we've trained for comes down to the next few hours. The main tactical display updated to show the full scope of the invasion. Massive void collective fleets were emerging from hyperspace at key strategic points throughout the galaxy. Their ships were larger and more numerous than any intelligence estimate had predicted. By the ancient codes, whispered Commander Thek. Look at the size of those formations. Each invasion fleet contained hundreds of vessels, from scout ships the size of galactic cruisers to massive dreadnoughts that dwarfed anything in Council databases. But most terrifying were the new ship classifications, biomechanical monstrosities that seemed to pulse with malevolent intelligence. Captain Morrison, Admiral ZYX-9 said, your initial assessment? Morrison studied the tactical display with grim concentration. Worse than we expected. They've committed significantly more resources than our projections suggested. These aren't probing attacks. They're going for total conquest in a single operation. Can we stop them? That depends on how well our training paid off and how much luck we have. Admiral ZYX-9 activated the galaxy-wide command frequency. All fleet commanders, this is Admiral ZYX-9. Operation Unified Defense is now active. Execute planned responses and maintain communication discipline. Across the galaxy, the combined human galactic fleets began moving toward their assigned defensive positions. The months of training and preparation were about to be tested against an enemy that had conquered dozens of galaxies. The first major engagement occurred in the Altair sector, where a void collective force of 80 ships encountered the combined Third Fleet under Captain Elena Vasquez of Earth and Admiral Crean of the Reptilian Defense Force. Altair Defense Command, this is Captain Vasquez. Beginning engagement with enemy formation Charlie 7. All galactic vessels maintain formation and execute Plan Delta on my mark. Admiral ZYX-9 watched the battle unfold through real-time sensor feeds. The galactic ships moved with precision that would have been impossible 6 months earlier, their crews now trained to work with human tactical systems and coordinate attacks using quantum-enhanced targeting. The Void Collective fleet approached with the confidence of conquerors who had never faced serious resistance. Their formation was loose, almost arrogant, as if they expected the defenders to flee at their approach. Mark, Captain Vasquez commanded. The human ships vanished from normal space-time, appearing behind and above the enemy formation while the galactic vessels executed a coordinated frontal assault. The Void Collective found themselves caught between two forces using tactics they had never encountered. But the enemy adapted quickly. Dark energy weapons carved through space, and several galactic ships suffered critical damage in the first exchange. The Void Collective vessels began separating, their biomechanical hulls shifting and changing configuration to optimize for different combat roles. They're adapting to our tactics, Admiral Crean reported, his voice tight with stress. Recommend immediate pattern shift to configuration beta. Negative, Captain Vasquez replied. Maintain current assault pattern. Trust your training. What happened next demonstrated why humans had become the galaxy's protectors. Instead of adapting their tactics to match enemy changes, the human ships simply began operating outside the normal parameters of space-time combat. The Void Collective weapons were designed to track and destroy targets moving through normal space. They were not designed to engage enemies who could step outside linear time, attack from parallel dimensions, or exist in multiple locations simultaneously. Impossible, Admiral ZYX-9 murmured as he watched human vessels phase through enemy ships, depositing explosive charges inside enemy hulls before returning to normal spacetime. The battle in Altair sector lasted 18 minutes. When it ended, the Void Collective force had been completely destroyed while the human galactic fleet suffered only moderate casualties. Altair sector secure, Captain Vasquez reported, proceeding to secondary objectives. But Admiral ZYX-9 could see that similar success wasn't being achieved everywhere. In the Vegas sector, Admiral Trillon's fleet was taking heavy casualties against a larger Void Collective force. The Centauri defense grid was reporting massive enemy breakthroughs. Captain Morrison, Admiral ZYX-9 said, some of our positions are failing. I know. We're repositioning assets to provide support. How many human ships do you actually have? Morrison paused in his coordination efforts. In this galaxy? About 300 vessels. Admiral ZYX-9 felt the universe shift around him. 300 ships were defending an entire galaxy against invasion fleets numbering in the thousands. Captain, that's impossible. You're outnumbered 50 to 1. Numbers aren't everything, Admiral. Watch and learn. The tactical display updated as human reinforcements arrived in threatened sectors. But, instead of conventional fleet deployments, Admiral ZYX-9 watched individual human ships or small groups appear in multiple locations simultaneously. Are those the same ships? He asked. Temporal multiplication, Morrison explained casually. Each ship can exist in multiple time streams simultaneously during combat operations. Effectively multiplies our force strength by a factor of 5. The revelation was staggering. Not only could human ships move through time and space at will, they could exist in multiple temporal states during battle. Each human vessel was effectively an entire squadron. The battle raged for 6 hours across dozens of star systems. Admiral ZYX-9 watched galactic crews perform with skill and courage that exceeded every expectation, coordinating with human forces to execute tactical maneuvers that would have been impossible for either force alone. But the Void Collective was learning. Each engagement taught them more about human capabilities, and their subsequent attacks became more sophisticated. Adaptive weapons that could track temporal displacement. Bioships that could regenerate faster than conventional weapons could destroy them. Quantum jammers that disrupted human communication systems. They're getting smarter, Morrison acknowledged during a brief tactical pause. Time to escalate. Escalate to what? Strategic weapons. Admiral ZYX-9 had heard references to human strategic weapons, but had never seen them deployed. The very term made him nervous, given what he had learned about human capabilities. Morrison to Fleet Command. The captain spoke into his communicator, requesting authorization for strategic weapon deployment. Threat assessment, Alpha Red. Acknowledged, Morrison. Strategic weapons authorized. God help us all. What exactly are strategic weapons? Admiral ZYX-9 asked. Tools we hope never to use, Morrison replied grimly. But the Void Collective just brought dimensional disruptors online. If we don't stop them now, they'll start tearing holes in space-time itself. The Void Collective's new weapons were indeed terrifying. Admiral ZYX-9 watched in horror as enemy dimensional disruptors began creating rifts in reality near populated systems. The weapons didn't just destroy matter. They unmade the fundamental structure of space-time itself. Dimensional cascade in the Proxima system, Lieutenant Kyra reported. The star is destabilizing. Estimated time to complete collapse, 47 minutes. Evacuate all inhabited worlds in that sector. Admiral ZYX-9 commanded. Emergency protocols. Admiral, Morrison said quietly. There's no time for evacuation. 3 billion people live in that system. The weight of command settled on Admiral ZYX-9's shoulders like a crushing burden. 3 billion lives hung in the balance while reality itself unraveled around a dying star. Deploy strategic weapons, he said finally. Morrison activated systems that Admiral ZYX-9 hadn't even known existed aboard the station. Deep in the human sections, devices that had remained dormant throughout the conflict suddenly came online. Strategic weapon Prometheus armed and ready, Morrison announced. Target, Void Collective Dimensional Disruptor Array. All ships clear engagement zone. What emerged from the human weapon wasn't a projectile or energy beam. It was a fundamental alteration of physical law within a precisely defined space. The Void Collective ships simply stopped existing, not destroyed but unmade at the quantum level. More importantly, the dimensional rift they had created snapped closed like a healing wound. The Proxima star stabilized, its nuclear fires resuming their normal patterns as space-time reasserted its proper structure. Dear gods, Admiral ZYX-9 whispered, you can rewrite the laws of physics. In small areas, for short periods, and at enormous energy cost, Morrison confirmed. It's not something we do lightly. The deployment of strategic weapons marked a turning point in the battle. Faced with enemies who could literally change the rules of reality, the Void Collective began a fighting withdrawal from several sectors. But they weren't retreating. Intelligence reports showed massive reinforcements approaching from outside the galaxy. Admiral, Commander Kim called out from her station. Long-range sensors are detecting additional Void Collective fleets. Estimated size, over 5,000 vessels. Admiral ZYX-9 felt his hope crumble. Even with human strategic weapons, facing odds of 15 to 1 against an enemy that adapted to every tactic seemed impossible. Captain Morrison, can we win this? Morrison studied the tactical projections with the calm expression of someone who had faced impossible odds before. Admiral, winning was never the objective. The objective was making conquest too expensive to continue. And if that fails, Morrison's pause was answer enough. If the current battle couldn't convince the Void Collective to seek easier targets, then every civilization in the galaxy would fall. But, as Admiral ZYX-9 watched the combined human galactic fleets regroup for the next phase of the battle, he realized something remarkable had happened. Galactic crews who had begun the day as primitive allies dependent on human protection were now fighting as equals alongside the most advanced military force in known space. They might not win, but they would make the Void Collective remember this galaxy as the place where easy conquest died. The second wave of enemy reinforcements would arrive within hours. Admiral ZYX-9 prepared for the battle that would determine the fate of every intelligent species in the galaxy. Either they would prove that the human approach to warfare could triumph over overwhelming odds, or they would die trying. The second Void Collective fleet emerged from hyperspace like a plague of mechanical locusts, their ships blotting out the stars as they approached the galaxy's core. Admiral ZYX-9 stood in the command center watching displays that showed the true scope of their predicament. Over 5,000 enemy vessels arranged in a formation that stretched across light years of space. Final count confirmed, Lieutenant Kyra reported, her voice steady despite the odds they faced. 5,237 enemy contacts. Classification ranges from heavy cruisers to super dreadnoughts we've never seen before. Admiral ZYX-9 felt the weight of command settle on his shoulders like a crushing burden. Every decision in the next few hours would determine whether galactic civilization survived or joined the countless others that had fallen to the Void Collective. Captain Morrison, assessment? Morrison stood at his coordination station, surrounded by holographic displays showing fleet positions throughout the galaxy. His expression was calm, almost contemplative, as he studied data streams that would have overwhelmed most beings. They're committing everything to this operation, he said finally. Intelligence reports suggest this represents nearly 70% of their available forces in this galactic cluster. Is that good news or bad news? Both. Bad because we're facing a force designed to conquer multiple galaxies simultaneously. Good because if we can stop them here, it will severely damage their expansion capabilities. Admiral ZYX-9 looked at the tactical display showing their own forces. Human ships numbered fewer than 300, while galactic fleets had been reduced by previous battles to roughly 800 vessels. Against over 5,000 enemies, the mathematics of warfare seemed insurmountable. "Captain, I need to know, can humans actually win this battle?" Morrison turned from his displays, and, for the first time since Admiral ZYX-9 had met him, the human captain's confidence seemed less certain. "Admiral, I'm going to be completely honest with you. This is beyond anything we've faced before. We've fought Void Collective forces, but never their full strategic deployment. We're about to find out if human tactics can overcome impossible odds." The admission was both terrifying and oddly reassuring. Admiral ZYX-9 had begun to think humans were incapable of uncertainty. "What's our battle plan?" "Defense in depth using layered obstacles," Morrison replied. "We can't match their numbers, so we make every kilometer of space they advance cost them ships they can't replace." And if that's not enough, Morrison activated his personal communicator. "Morrison to Fleet Command. Request confirmation on Project Exodus authorization." "Stand by," came the reply. After a long pause, Project Exodus authorized if tactical situation becomes untenable. "God preserve us all." "What's Project Exodus?" Admiral ZYX-9 asked. "Emergency evacuation protocol. If we can't stop the Void Collective, we evacuate as much of the galactic population as possible to safer regions." The casual mention of evacuating an entire galaxy's population was staggering. Admiral ZYX-9 was beginning to understand that human capabilities extended far beyond military technology. "How do you evacuate billions of people?" "Very carefully and with significant advanced planning," Morrison replied. "We've been preparing contingencies since we first detected Void Collective activity in this region." Before Admiral ZYX-9 could ask for details, alarms sounded throughout the command center. The enemy fleet was beginning its advance. "All stations, enemy fleet is approaching outer defense perimeter. Estimated contact in 37 minutes. Admiral ZYX-9 activated the galaxy-wide command frequency. "All fleet commanders, this is Admiral ZYX-9. Execute Operation Final Stand. All ships to designated positions. May fortune favor the prepared." The first defensive line consisted of automated weapon platforms and minefields that had been constructed over the past months using combined human-galactic technology. As the Void Collective fleet approached, space itself seemed to come alive with defensive fire. Quantum mines detonated in carefully coordinated patterns, creating zones of disrupted space-time that forced enemy ships into predetermined approach vectors. Automated defense platforms opened fire with weapons that bent the laws of physics, sending streams of concentrated dimensional energy into the enemy formations. The Void Collective fleet responded with overwhelming firepower, their weapons turning sections of space into temporary hells of dark energy and twisted matter. But Admiral ZYX-9 watched in amazement as the defensive systems absorbed punishment that should have vaporized them instantly. "How are the defense platforms surviving those attacks?" he asked. "Distributed existence," Morrison explained. "Each platform exists partially in normal space and partially in parallel dimensions. The enemy can damage them, but not completely destroy them." The first defense line held for 23 minutes before being overwhelmed. But it had cost the Void Collective over 300 ships, a significant portion of their smaller vessels. Second defense line engaging, Lieutenant Kyra reported. The second line consisted of combined human-galactic fleets using mobile tactics. Unlike the static defenses, these ships could reposition, adapt, and coordinate complex maneuvers designed to maximize enemy losses while minimizing their own casualties. Admiral ZYX-9 watched Captain Elena Vasquez lead a combined force of human and galactic ships in an assault that defied conventional understanding of space combat. Her ships appeared and disappeared across multiple locations, striking enemy formations from impossible angles before vanishing back into dimensional folds. "Vasquez to all units." Her voice came over the tactical frequency. "Execute pattern Omega-7. All galactic vessels maintain formation integrity and trust your targeting systems." The galactic ships had learned to fight alongside human vessels using tactics that seemed like magic. They coordinated attacks through dimensions, synchronized strikes across multiple time streams, and executed maneuvers that required split-second timing across light years of space. But the Void Collective was adapting. Their ships began deploying countermeasures specifically designed to disrupt human tactical advantages. Quantum jammers that prevented dimensional travel. Temporal anchors that locked human ships into linear time. Biomechanical adapters that allowed their vessels to phase partially out of normal space. "They're learning our techniques," Morrison observed grimly. The second defense line held for 41 minutes before tactical exhaustion forced a withdrawal. The Void Collective had lost another 600 ships, but they still outnumbered the defenders 3-1. Final defense line preparing for engagement, Admiral ZYX-9 announced. The final line was everything they had left, every operational human ship, every surviving galactic vessel, and every desperate tactic they could devise. It would be fought in the space around the galaxy's most important systems, with billions of lives hanging in the balance. "Admiral," Morrison said quietly, "there's something you need to know before this final engagement begins." "What?" "The human ships you've been fighting alongside aren't our actual fleet. They're advanced automated units controlled by a small number of human operators." Admiral ZYX-9 felt the universe shift around him. "What do you mean?" "Each human ship is actually a sophisticated artificial intelligence system operated remotely by human crews located in heavily protected command centers. We learned centuries ago that risking actual human lives in tactical engagements was inefficient." "How many actual humans are involved in this battle?" "About 50 operators total." The revelation was staggering. 50 humans were coordinating a defense that had already destroyed nearly 1,000 enemy ships. The level of technological sophistication required was beyond anything Admiral ZYX-9 could comprehend. "But you're here, in person." Diplomatic and strategic command personnel remain with Allied forces. "We don't risk our allies' lives while protecting ourselves from a distance." As the final battle began, Admiral ZYX-9 watched human remote units coordinate with galactic crews in a desperate defense of their shared civilization. The Void Collective committed everything to breaking through, their massive super dreadnoughts finally entering the combat zone. The super dreadnoughts were mobile fortresses the size of small moons, their weapons capable of destroying entire fleets with single volleys. They had been held in reserve until now, but the Void Collective was clearly tired of losing ships to enemies they considered primitives. "Morrison to Fleet Command." The captain spoke urgently into his communicator. "Enemy super dreadnoughts confirmed active. Request immediate deployment of all available strategic assets." "Negative, Morrison. Strategic assets are committed to operations in Galaxies 7 and 12. You have what you have." Morrison's expression darkened. "Admiral, we're on our own. No additional strategic weapons, no reinforcements." The super dreadnoughts opened fire, their weapons creating temporary rifts in space-time that consumed everything in their path. 3 galactic ships simply ceased to exist, unmade at the fundamental level by weapons that treated matter as a temporary inconvenience. "All ships, emergency scatter pattern." Admiral ZYX-9 commanded. "Avoid the big ones and focus on their escorts." But even as the defenders scattered, Admiral ZYX-9 realized something remarkable was happening. Galactic crews who had begun this war as novices were now executing maneuvers that challenged the most sophisticated enemy vessels. They had learned not just human tactics, but human audacity. Captain Dren of the Aquatic Federation led his ship directly through a super dreadnought's main weapon beam, using timing so precise that he phased through the attack during the brief moment between energy pulses. Admiral Crean coordinated a strike by 17 galactic ships that overwhelmed an enemy super dreadnought's defenses through pure tactical brilliance. "They're fighting like humans," Morrison observed with something like pride. The battle raged for 3 hours. Ships died on both sides, but gradually the mathematics began to shift in favor of the defenders. The Void Collective's overwhelming numbers meant nothing when every attack cost them more ships than they destroyed. Finally, Admiral ZYX-9 watched something unprecedented happen on the tactical displays. The The Void Collective fleet began to withdraw. Are they retreating? Lieutenant Kyra asked in disbelief. Negative, Morrison replied, studying enemy movement patterns. They're regrouping for a final assault. Everything they have left in one coordinated attack. The enemy fleet pulled back to extreme weapons range and began charging their most powerful weapons simultaneously. Over 2,000 ships preparing to fire every weapon they possessed in a single devastating volley. They're going to sterilize everything in this sector, Admiral ZYX-9 realized. Not if I can help it, Morrison said. He activated communication systems Admiral ZYX-9 hadn't known existed. Morrison to Earth Prime Command. Emergency authorization requested for Omega Protocol. The reply came instantly. Omega Protocol authorized. Initiating now. What's Omega Protocol? Admiral ZYX-9 asked. Something we hoped never to use. Across the galaxy, devices that had remained hidden for decades suddenly activated. Not weapons, but tools that redefined the fundamental nature of space-time within their area of effect. When the Void Collective fired their final coordinated assault, the weapons simply disappeared. Not blocked or absorbed, but translated into a parallel dimension where they posed no threat to normal space. More importantly, the energy feedback from the dimensional translation overloaded every weapon system in the Void Collective fleet simultaneously. Their weapons are dead, Lieutenant Kyra reported in amazement. All enemy ships show complete weapons failure. Morrison activated the galaxy-wide frequency. This is Captain Morrison to all Void Collective vessels. You have 60 seconds to begin immediate withdrawal from this galaxy or face complete destruction. The response came from what was apparently the enemy fleet commander. Impossible. Your technology cannot exceed collective capabilities. You've been testing yourselves against our local defensive forces, Morrison replied calmly. You haven't been fighting actual human technology until now. As if to emphasize his point, space around the Void Collective fleet began to change. Stars brightened, gravity fields shifted, and the fundamental constants of physics within the enemy formation began to fluctuate. Withdraw now, Morrison continued, or discover what happens when humans stop being polite. The Void Collective fleet jumped to hyperspace without another word. Silence filled the command center for several minutes as the reality of victory settled on exhausted crews throughout the galaxy. Is it over? Admiral ZYX-9 asked. For now, Morrison replied. They'll be back eventually, but probably not for decades. We hurt them badly enough that they'll look for easier targets. And the human fleet? Your real capabilities. Morrison smiled, and for the first time it seemed genuinely warm rather than politely diplomatic. Admiral, what you've seen over the past months represents about 3% of actual human technology. We're explorers and protectors by nature, but when someone threatens innocent life, we stop being polite about it. As Admiral ZYX-9 processed the implications of that statement, he realized that the distress signal that had started everything hadn't just saved the galaxy from the Void Collective. It had introduced them to neighbors who redefined what was possible in the universe. Humanity didn't just possess superior technology. They possessed the wisdom to use it responsibly and the courage to share it with others who proved themselves worthy of trust. The galaxy would never be the same. But, for the first time in his long career, Admiral ZYX-9 believed that change would be for the better. Outside the command center windows, human and galactic ships worked together to repair battle damage and prepare for whatever challenges the future might bring. The age of human galactic cooperation had begun, and the universe was about to discover what intelligence life could achieve when protected by guardians who treated physics as a starting point rather than an absolute limit. The distress signal had indeed changed the galaxy's view of humanity forever. And humanity, it seemed, was perfectly content to let the galaxy believe they had seen the full extent of human capabilities. Some secrets, Admiral ZYX-9 reflected, were worth keeping.